What's up, guys? My name is D'Angelo Edwards, and I am the host of the YouTube channel Hats Off Media, where I discuss the more often overlooked side of animation, along with some more niche history for flavor. Today, I have been asked by Deli to help shine a light on some short films presented by the National Film Board of Canada, and I am more than happy to do so, because people need to know that America, France, and Japan aren't the only places with good animation. While the Flash cartoons and more mediocre affair might rise to the top, Canada has a long history with experimenting with animation, and when given the proper amount of time and money, they can bring out some breathtaking projects. And some of the most innovative, interesting, and thought-provoking stuff can be found right here, with fascinating ways of using mixed media to simply innovating with a previously known form. These short films will never fail to try and be something new, either in storytelling or presentation. So, with Deli's blessing, I'm going to tell you about two of them that really spoke to me.
Oh, Nikolai!
Nikolai? Who's Nikolai?
Who's Nikolai? He's been here for months. He's my little angel. Oh, shit.
Freaks of Nurture is a 2018 short directed by Alexandra Lemay that tells the story of an overworked daughter struggling to finish her film for school, and an overworked mother trying her best to raise an ever-increasing family of foster children and dogs. A seemingly straightforward claymation short, as you watch it, it turns into a relatable story of stretching yourself too thin, all while trying to find comfort in someone who is going through the exact same thing. The thing that stood out the most to me in this short was the animation, or more importantly, how clever it was. The film is made in stop motion, and when it starts to show the daughter working on her own film, it's also in stop motion. The way the animation is done when it focuses on the daughter's film is so cool, because it switches to a more crude version of stop motion to match her skill level. She's a college student, and the work she has reflects it. But there is some clever design work in her project that shows that she has the knack for it, like how the smoke in her volcano is what looks like yarn, but by twisting it and moving it out of frame, it gives the impression of smoke drifting upwards. It's a clever little idea that I could totally see a student coming up with last minute. Also, in the main parts of the short, the environments look very lived in, with the whole thing feeling really cluttered, but in a good way. All the stuff you see has been used, and the messy staging helps you relate to the fact that these characters are really treading water. While the actual movements of the puppets themselves might not blow you away, the prop design and setting more than make up for it. I also really love how the conversations feel. The daughter looking for help, the mom trying her best but clearly needing help herself. It really nails that sense of dependence that comes from growing up in a single-parent household. And it makes sense that this comes through seeing how the creator based it on her own life. There are also some pretty good sight gags, like a mess being wiped from the camera, or the character's face is coming undone at certain scenes. They really used everything at their disposal to help get the theme across, and I think they handled it splendidly. Even down to the moment the daughter realizes that, despite both of their busy schedules, they both want nothing more than to help each other. And the brief exchange they have at the end really sells that. A very warm short that was a treat from beginning to end.
The Zoo is a 2018 film by Julia Kwan that tells the parallel stories of an aged-out polar bear and a military veteran. Their stories are intertwined from the day they first locked eyes in a massive zoo. As both would grow older, they'd live to see their environments take on steady development. While they still find themselves interacting once every blue moon, they were both mere husks of what they once were. Both are weak, hollow, perhaps trapped by the antiquity of their being, but more or less are resigned to their fates. Then one night, while in the midst of their twilight reflection, they'd find the energy to make peace with their fate and dance the night away. As you can probably tell, the story is not a serialized epic, but because of its simplicity, it had an opportunity to take the way it told itself in many different directions. On surface level, this probably seems like a simple story that was relayed rather simply too, but I feel like the emotionality it may bring out is much more powerful and subtle due to its presentation. The cutout animation contributes to the calm, melancholy atmosphere as well. I can see it being tied to a more ethereal, loose sense of being, which works well in conjunction with the theme around memories and reflecting on days now past. Everything has a quiet sense of age to it, which fits in with the slower, more deliberate movement of the paper cutouts. The environmental leanings through such a downtrodden story is a fascinating thing to observe as well. The first minute or so just delivers the right amount of spontaneous gut punch. The Zoo is actually a silent film, so there's not much in the way of proper voice acting to discuss or anything. The sound design makes the whole thing feel a bit claustrophobic, but in the context of the two mains withering away surrounded by an extensive cityscape, it works to its advantage. The music design, especially in the final 2 minutes or so, provides a nice atmosphere for a short but sweet piece. The ending gave life to these two while they were coming to grips with the finality of their situations. Being as old as they were, death is imminent, possibly around the corner. But those final moments enjoying the company of the fireworks felt more celebratory than anything. It's wild too because the fireworks themselves both initially triggered traumatic experiences in both the bear and the senior. So on one level, they're coming to terms with the ideas of their own mortality the midnight spectacle reminded them of, but to that end, they're also kind of reminiscing on days past. One definitely had a better time on Earth than the other, but they both had plenty of good memories to share, especially when among each other's presence. They're not exactly brothers from other mothers, but you can feel the connection through the fireworks. Their collective energetic spirits were reaching the other through the colorful display, and it shows. There's a lot to that final scene that makes everything feel all the more beautiful. While not in the most dramatic or flashy entry, The Zoo really sells itself as a story from both sides of the aisle. It's thoughtful and subtle even in the process of portraying a literal spectacle, and it's just a treat to watch.
I'm Okay is a 2018 film directed by Elizabeth Hobbs that is a masterclass in abstract storytelling. Telling the story of expressionist artist Oskar Kokoschka and his experience as an artist, soldier, and lover, I'm Okay showcases what happens when a creative mind is thrust into the horrors of war, and the aftermath of having to live not only with yourself, but also the mistakes you've made. At first glance, this might come off as a bit pretentious, but what really shocked me was how easy something like this was to follow. Of course, if you're familiar with the man it's based on, you can pick up on more of the subtle nuances, but in terms of theming and narrative, this short is abstract but complete. It tells the story of passion, loving, and losing, and being thrown into something that you were neither prepared for, nor have any stake in, really. The loose and messy style perfectly captures the frantic thoughts of an artist who has just come back from war. There's a speed in the strokes of paint that give energy to even the more static scenes, of which there are a few of considering this film is always moving. I mean, think of it. You just come back from being seriously injured in battle, not knowing if you're going to live or die. Your mind would be racing too, and this style really captures that. Another thing that really helps to pace out the short is the music, at some points sounding bombastic and epic, while during the more mundane parts of his life slowing down to a jaunty, almost comical beat. Though that just leads into showing that mundane doesn't always mean simple. You feel the man's passion in every frame, his lust for the woman he's having an affair with, his fear of being thrust into a war he didn't ask for, all leading up to a small moment of quiet, when both him and the viewer realize it's all over. This short was only 6 minutes, but it's so full of both style and substance that I was thoroughly satisfied after watching this. As a creative myself, I really connected to how his thoughts were presented, because the way this movie looks is exactly the way my head feels when I'm brainstorming. Formless, fast, and messy. But in that formless mess, a million stories are just waiting to be told. And the story told here is done not only novelly, but effectively.
Turbine is another 2018 film from Alex Boya surrounding an overeager housewife and her enthusiasm for her husband's return home from work. Little does she know that he'd come to be a bit more attached to his work than expected, as he'd come home with a fresh face swap paired with his biplane. At first she's a bit skeptical and to embrace both sides of her husband. It's a bit of an adjustment for sure. I mean, she just picks the side that's seemingly more human. But when he fans the flames by starting to fall for their ceiling fan, quite literally, she has to start to take this a bit more seriously. This film really does well with itself as a tale of juxtaposition. Stylistically and narratively, it really does find a way to tip the scales enough to make you squirm in your seat, but not enough to work you off entirely. The animation style and general visual aesthetic are already testament to that. And while I do like my more colorful entries into the National Film Board, I really do appreciate the rougher etchings made on more conceptual films. It's a humorous style while also being a bit uncanny, a tad unsettling. Pair that up with the eerily realistic inanimate components such as the fan, the head of the motor, and the train engine, and it makes the reality of the messaging literally too present to ignore. The main message is already fairly laid out in the synopsis, but the way it was actually executed was really nice. It's a bit muddled since the pacing is a bit unbalanced, but it certainly did its job. It doesn't read as your typical message about acceptance unless you refuse to read between the lines. It's such an extreme scenario to throw out there, but in reality it doesn't carry so much of a radical meaning. If people come to change over time and come back into the fray a changed person, are we not to respect their evolution so long as it's not detrimental to ours? Their new changes might be a bit off-putting, but it's always better to try and meet people halfway than to push or be pushed to one side or the other. It's a story of how far love is willing to be stretched, if you can put in the elbow grease, of course. No surprise, but the sound design here is solid as well. It's mainly responsible for driving the mood to be more uncanny or stifling in the face of a lack thereof. Metal has never sounded so intimidating. While the ending came up a bit abruptly, it was fairly satisfying to see the wife rip the band-aid off and support her lover. In a way, it feeds into the structure of the film itself, right? It holds you to see this go on until the very last moment, where everything suddenly comes into focus. It's greatly in keeping with the tone built up, and the ideal way to end it off. As far as new classics go, this is easily one of the NFB's most memorable in recent history. It's fascinating to see what the next generation can do to reshape and recontextualize older principles and messages. Even with the Turbine's more traditional style, it never loses track of its intent, which, paired with the way it's executed, makes for a great adventure.